Welcome to The Explainer, where we distill big ideas into clear, actionable insights. Today, we're diving into a book that's, well, legendary, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. What we're going to do is break down its core principles into a powerful framework you can start using, like, right now.
So let's kick things off with a quote. "This is what I get for defending myself." Now, I want you to take a second and just guess. Who do you think said these words? And get this, they said it moments after being captured in a deadly, hour-long shootout with over 100 cops on a New York City rooftop. The answer? A notorious gangster and cop killer named Two Gun Crowley. And his reaction? It just gets right to the heart of the human problem that Carnegie starts with. I mean, if a hardened criminal who murdered a police officer in cold blood doesn't blame himself for anything, what good does criticizing anyone else ever do?
And that brings us right to Carnegie's foundational principle. It's the one that explains why our natural, everyday instinct to criticize, condemn, or complain is almost always a huge mistake.
You know, psychologists like B.F. Skinner proved this decades ago. Criticism is basically futile. It doesn't create any lasting change. It just puts people on the defensive. It wounds their pride, which is a big deal, and it stirs up a powerful resentment that can literally last a lifetime. But on the flip side, an animal or a person who's rewarded for good behavior, they learn and retain so much more effectively. Appreciation inspires people to get better. Condemnation just inspires contempt.
So, the first and most fundamental rule for dealing with people is really simple. Just like Benjamin Franklin put it, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain. And let's be honest, most of them do. But it takes real character and self-control to be understanding. So, rule 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Okay, so if we agree to stop criticizing, that leaves a pretty huge question, right? What do we do instead? What is the single biggest secret to actually influencing people, to making them want to do things? Now, this number, 85%, it might seem totally random, but it comes from some pretty stunning research by the Carnegie Institute of Technology. They uncovered a fact that should really make all of us stop and think. Even in super technical fields like engineering, only about 15% of your financial success comes from what you know technically. The other 85%, it's all down to your skill in human engineering, your ability to lead people. And the key to unlocking that 85% is understanding this one fundamental human drive. The great philosopher John Dewey called it the desire to be important. Another, William James, called it the craving to be appreciated. It's that deep, almost gnawing human hunger to feel valued that really separates us from the animals. And the person who can honestly satisfy that hunger, well, they will hold people in the palm of their hand. You know, Charles Schwab, a guy who was paid over $1 million a year, back when that was an absolutely insane amount of money, he claimed this was his secret. He wasn't getting paid for what he knew about steel. He was paid for his ability to stir up enthusiasm. And how'd he do it? By giving honest, sincere appreciation. Not cheap flattery, that's just counterfeit, right? We're talking about real, heartfelt praise. Okay, so with that foundation, don't criticize, give sincere appreciation. Carnegie then gives us a whole playbook. It's full of simple yet incredibly powerful ways to make people like us almost instantly. All right, a little test for you. The New York Telephone Company once analyzed 500 phone calls just to find the single most frequently used word. Any guesses what it was? Yep, you got it, the personal pronoun I. It was used 3,900 times. People are, as Carnegie puts it, 100 times more interested in themselves and their own wants and problems than they are in you and your problems. I mean, think about it. When you see a group photo you're in, whose picture do you look for first? So, here's the crucial point. To make people like you, you have to shift the focus completely onto them. Carnegie lays out a few simple rules that do exactly that. First, become genuinely interested in them. Second, smile. It costs you nothing but enriches everyone else. Third, remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. And finally, be a good listener. Encourage them to talk about themselves. Okay, so once you've made these connections and people genuinely like you, the door swings wide open for the next step, winning them over to your way of thinking. So how do you share your point of view without immediately starting a fight?
Henry Ford absolutely nailed it. He said the secret is to honestly, genuinely try to see things from the other person's perspective. Most of us, we just don't do this. We're way too busy cooking up our own brilliant comeback to actually understand where they're coming from in the first place.
To avoid arguments, you've got to start on common ground. Find the things you both agree on. This is the Socratic method in a nutshell. Get the other person saying yes, yes, right from the jump. Once you have them moving in a positive yes direction, they're going to be so much more receptive to your big idea at the end.
You probably remember that old fable of the sun and the wind, right? They were arguing about who was stronger. The wind blew with all its might to get a man's coat off, but he just clutched it even tighter. Then the sun simply shone warmly, and the man smiled, wiped his brow, and took off his coat all by himself. The lesson is crystal clear. Friendliness and a little drop of honey will always beat out force and a gallon of gall.
So what happens when you're a leader? Maybe a manager, a parent, a team captor? Well, you're going to have to correct mistakes. It's part of the job. Here's how you can change people's behavior without offending them or making them resent you. It's kind of like a barber who lathers a man's face before he shaves him. It is always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we've heard some praise about our good points. So before you point out a mistake, always begin with some sincere praise and honest appreciation for what that person has done right.
And here's a perfect way to call attention to mistakes indirectly. It comes down to changing just one little 3-letter word. So instead of saying, "We're really proud of you for raising your grades, but if you'd worked harder on algebra, try this. We're really proud of you for raising your grades. And by continuing those efforts next term, your algebra can be right up there with them." See the difference? The but just cancels out the praise. The and turns it into a challenge. The executive Owen D. Young, he never gave a direct order. He would say things like, "You might consider this," or "Do you think that would work?" Asking questions instead of just giving orders, it sparks creativity, it makes people feel like they're part of the decision, and maybe most importantly, it saves their pride.
This brings us to what might be the single most important rule for any leader. Even if we are 100% right and the other person is dead wrong, we only destroy their ego by causing them to lose face. As the great aviator Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote, "Hurting a man in his dignity is a crime." The takeaway is so simple. Always let the other person save face. Look, Carnegie's wisdom isn't about mastering some bag of tricks. It's about fundamentally changing your whole approach to people. It's a new way of life that's based on empathy. So here's a final thought, a challenge for you. Pick just one principle from this explainer. Maybe it's don't criticize or smile or let the other person save face. Try it out honestly for just 1 week. What do you think might change? You might be absolutely astonished by the results.